The massive crystalline dome of the Galactic arena hummed with anticipation, its translucent walls shifting between deep crimson and electric blue. 15,000 alien species from across the known universe crowded into seats that defied conventional physics, their bodies a kaleidoscope of impossible shapes and breathtaking diversity. Zara Rodriguez stood at the entrance, her reflection fractured across multiple holographic surfaces. She was a study in controlled tension, 5 feet 8 inches of pure human potential, her mixed heritage evident in the sharp angles of her face and the determined set of her jaw. Years of parkour, military training, and quantum mechanics research had transformed her into something more than just a soldier. She was a living algorithm, a human solution to impossible problems. Around her, the rest of the human team assembled. They looked nothing like the muscled warriors of Galactic legend. Dr. Alex Chen, the quantum physicist, adjusted his glasses, a quirky accessory that seemed absurdly out of place in the most advanced combat arena in the universe. Beside him, Marcus Okonkwo stretched with the fluid grace of a former Olympic gymnast, his Neuralink implants barely visible beneath his skin. The arena itself was a marvel of technological wonder. Adaptive surfaces that could transform from solid rock to liquid mercury in milliseconds, gravity wells that could crush organic matter or create impossible floating landscapes, holographic projections that could simulate entire planetary environments in the blink of an eye. This was the Crucible, the galaxy's most infamous testing ground, where species proved their worth or were forever forgotten. A thunderous roar erupted from the alien crowd. The Kralzar Grand Marshal materialized on the central platform, his massive form a terrifying blend of mechanical augmentation and organic brutality. Standing nearly 12 feet tall, his exoskeleton rippled with power that could crush mountains. Dozens of sensory stalks extended from his head, each capable of detecting the most minute changes in biological and electromagnetic signatures. Humans, his voice boomed, translated across 1,000 different communication spectrums. You stand where countless species have fallen. The Crucible does not care for potential. It cares only for survival. Zara Rodriguez met his gaze without flinching. Behind her, the human team represented humanity's most unexpected warriors. A computer engineer who could rewrite combat algorithms faster than most could breathe. A marine biologist who understood ecological systems so deeply she could turn any environment into a tactical advantage. A wilderness survival expert whose understanding of adaptation made conventional strategy look like child's play. The Grand Marshal's laughter was a sound that had broken the spirit of 1,000 civilizations. It rolled through the arena like a sonic weapon, designed to instill fear and hopelessness. Most species would have already surrendered, their collective will shattered by the sound alone. But humans were different. Zara's team exchanged a look, not of fear, but of something far more dangerous. Excitement, curiosity, the kind of collaborative energy that had taken a small species from stone tools to interstellar exploration in mere centuries. The first challenge materialized around them. The arena floor became a nightmare landscape of shifting gravitational fields, electromagnetic disruptions, and environmental hazards that would kill most species in seconds. Toxic atmospheres, razor-sharp crystal formations, temporal distortions that could age or de-age a living being in moments. The Kralzar expected defeat, submission, another demonstration of their galactic supremacy. Instead, they would get a lesson in human potential. Zara Rodriguez took a single step forward. Behind her, the human team moved as a single organism, not a group of individuals, but a living, breathing solution to the impossible. The Crucible had no idea what was about to hit it. 10 years earlier, the first transmission arrived. Not with fanfare, not with diplomatic pomp, but through a series of mathematical sequences that would reshape humanity's understanding of everything. Dr. Elena Martinez remembered that night with crystalline clarity. The radio telescope array in Chile had been running a deep space scanning protocol, a routine search that had yielded nothing but cosmic background noise for decades. She was the lead astronomer, a woman who had dedicated her life to listening to the universe's whispers. The signal came at 3:42 a.m. local time. Not a message in any traditional sense, but a complex mathematical proof that demonstrated intelligence beyond anything humans had ever conceived. It was a greeting, a challenge, and a warning all wrapped into a single transmission of pure information. Within hours, the global communication networks lit up. Military strategists, scientific institutions, and government leaders converged in emergency sessions that lasted days. The transmission wasn't just a discovery. It was an invitation to something far larger than humanity had ever imagined. The Kralzar Confederation didn't send ambassadors. They didn't request diplomatic meetings or seek peaceful communication. Instead, they broadcast a single holographic transmission that appeared simultaneously in every major government center, research facility, and public space across the planet. A massive crystalline figure materialized, part living organism, part technological marvel. Its voice translated through every possible communication medium, bypassing language barriers with terrifying precision. Humanity, the transmission began. You have been observed. You will be tested. The invitation to the crucible was not a request. It was a decree. Most diplomatic advisors argued for caution. The United Nations convened an emergency session that lasted weeks. Military experts presented worst-case scenarios. Intelligence agencies ran countless simulations. Each projection painted a picture of potential annihilation. But something fundamental about human nature defied those calculations. Where others saw an impossible challenge, humanity saw an opportunity. The selection process was unprecedented. Unlike the rigid military hierarchies of most galactic civilizations, humans approached the team selection like solving a complex, multidimensional puzzle. They didn't seek the strongest or the most aggressive. They sought adaptability, creativity, the ability to see solutions where others saw only obstacles. Zara Rodriguez's selection was anything but traditional. Her background was a tapestry of seemingly unrelated experiences. A decade in military special operations, advanced degrees in quantum mechanics and ecological systems, championships in urban parkour, research publications that challenged fundamental understanding of adaptive intelligence. She wasn't the strongest, she wasn't the most decorated, but she represented something uniquely human. The ability to connect disparate knowledge into revolutionary solutions. The team came together like a living organism. Dr. Alex Chen, whose work in quantum computing had revolutionized neural network design. Marcus Okonkwo, an expert in human performance who understood the delicate balance between physical capability and mental resilience. A marine biologist who could read environmental systems like most people read books. A computer engineer who saw code as a living, breathing entity. They weren't warriors in any traditional sense. They were problem solvers, innovators, humans who understood that the greatest strength lies not in individual power, but in collaborative potential. The Kralzar expected a military team. They would receive something far more dangerous. As the final team members were selected, a quiet electricity ran through humanity. This was more than a competition. This was a moment of collective potential, a chance to show the universe what it meant to be human. The galaxy was about to learn a fundamental truth. Humanity's greatest weapon was never its strength, but its capacity to reimagine what was possible. The training facility looked nothing like a traditional military compound. Nestled in a remote mountain range, it was a living laboratory of human potential. A place where the boundaries between science, strategy, and pure imagination blurred into something entirely new. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of a massive holographic chamber, her fingers dancing across quantum computational interfaces that most scientists would consider impossibly complex. Around her, the human crucible team moved through scenarios that defied conventional understanding of preparation. Marcus Okonkwo worked with a neural link system that was part engineering marvel, part artistic expression. His background in human performance optimization went far beyond traditional athletic training. He wasn't just preparing bodies. He was designing a collaborative intelligence that could think and react as a single fluid organism. The Kralzar expect individual warriors. He explained to the team during one training session, "We're going to give them something they've never seen before, a living, breathing system of human potential." Each team member brought a unique perspective that seemed completely unrelated to traditional combat training. Dr. Alex Chen, the quantum physicist, spent hours creating adaptive algorithms that could predict and counter alien combat strategies. His approach wasn't about predicting individual movements, but understanding the underlying patterns of strategic decision-making. The marine biologist, Dr. Sophia Nakamura, transformed the team's understanding of environmental adaptation. She showed them how living systems respond to challenges, not through brute force, but through intricate, collaborative networks of information and response. Their training ground was a marvel of technological imagination. Holographic environments that could shift from Arctic tundra to dense jungle in milliseconds, gravitational fields that could be manipulated like clay, sensory inputs that challenged the very understanding of perception. Zara Rodriguez watched as the team moved through increasingly complex scenarios. They weren't just training, they were reimagining what preparation could mean. On day 17, something extraordinary happened. The team encountered a simulation so complex that it should have been impossible to solve. An environment that changed its fundamental rules with each passing moment. Gravity that flowed like water. Electromagnetic fields that could dissolve matter or create entire landscapes from pure energy. Where most teams would have broken, this group began to laugh. "Look at the patterns," Dr. Chen called out, his fingers manipulating holographic data streams. "It's not about solving the challenge. It's about understanding the underlying system." They didn't approach the scenario as a problem to be conquered, but as a puzzle to be understood. Each member contributed something unique. Marcus analyzed movement patterns. Sophia read the environmental systems. Alex broke down the computational logic. Zara watched them transform the impossible into something manageable. The facility's AI tracking system nearly overloaded. The team was generating problem-solving approaches that defied conventional computational models. They weren't just adapting. They were evolving in real time. Military advisors watching the training footage were baffled. This wasn't a team being prepared for a competition. This was something else entirely, a living, breathing demonstration of human potential. "We're not training to fight," Zora explained during a strategy session. "We're training to understand, to adapt, to see possibilities where others see only limitations." As the final days of preparation approached, the team had become something more than individual humans. They were a collaborative intelligence, a living system that could think, react, and solve problems in ways the Kralzar could never anticipate. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was never about individual power. It was about the magic that happens when human minds truly work together. The first challenge materialized like a nightmare given form. Prismatic energy cascaded around the human team, creating an environment that would have obliterated most species in seconds. Gravitational fields twisted and warped, creating impossible geometries that defied fundamental laws of physics. Zara Rodriguez took a single breath. Around her, the team moved with a synchronicity that seemed to defy individual human limitations. The Kralzar observation deck fell silent. This was the moment they had anticipated. Another species about to be crushed by the Crucible's impossible challenges. They had no idea what was coming. Dr. Alex Chen's neural interface began processing the environmental data faster than any known computational system. His fingers, more like conduits of pure information than human appendages, started weaving through holographic data streams that appeared and disappeared in milliseconds. "Gravitational anomaly," he called out. Not a warning. Not a concern, just an observation. Marcus Okonkwo was already moving. His body twisted through the changing gravitational fields with a grace that suggested he wasn't fighting the environment. He was dancing with it. Where most would see impossible obstacles, he saw a complex system waiting to be understood. The first alien team had been reduced to molecular disassembly within moments of entering the challenge zone. Their sophisticated combat systems had simply failed. The human team did something entirely unexpected. They began to laugh. Dr. Sophia Nakamura identified the environmental patterns with the same excitement a child might show discovering a new game. "Look," she called to the team, "the gravitational fields are creating a recursive feedback loop. It's not a barrier, it's a communication system." Where other species saw a combat challenge, humans saw a puzzle. The Kralzar observers began to shift uncomfortably. Their advanced sensory systems couldn't comprehend what they were witnessing. The human team wasn't just surviving the impossible environment, they were transforming it. Marcus moved through a section that would have crushed a standard combat exoskeleton. His movements weren't about strength, they were about understanding. Each step was a calculation, each movement a complex algorithm of human potential. Dr. Chen's computational overlay began to interact with the challenge environment itself. Lines of probability and possibility danced around the team, creating protective fields that seemed to emerge from pure thought. "It's not about beating the system," Zara called out. "It's about understanding it." The first alien team had approached the challenge as a test of combat capabilities. The humans approached it as a conversation with an unknown intelligence. Holographic data streams exploded around them, complex mathematical sequences that translated environmental challenges into pure information. Where most would see chaos, the human team saw an intricate language waiting to be decoded. Marcus transformed a gravitational crush zone into a navigation path. Sophia read the environmental systems like a complex musical score. Alex turned computational barriers into highways of possibility. And Zara watched, a conductor of human potential. The Kralzar observation team went silent. This wasn't just survival. This was something entirely new. 37 minutes into the challenge, the human team emerged. Not just survived, transformed. The challenge zone itself seemed to pulse with a new kind of energy, as if it had been fundamentally changed by their presence. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was never about destruction. It was about transformation. The Crucible's psychological challenge was legendary. Entire civilizations had been reduced to mental fragments within moments of entering this stage. It was designed to strip away every defense, every hope, every possibility of survival. The human team approached it like a collaborative thought experiment. The environment materialized around them, a landscape that existed simultaneously in multiple states of consciousness. Sensory inputs that could drive most species into immediate psychological fracture. Temporal distortions that played with perception of reality itself. Dr. Sophia Nakamura was the first to recognize the true nature of the challenge. "It's not about resisting," she said, her voice calm and analytical. "It's about understanding." Where other species would have fought against the psychological pressure, the humans did something entirely unexpected. They began to communicate, not through traditional means, but through a complex network of shared consciousness that their neural interfaces allowed. Marcus Okonkwo's background in human performance optimization became their greatest asset. He understood that the human mind wasn't a single entity, but a complex, adaptive system. Each team member's unique perspective became a strength, not a weakness. The psychological landscape shifted. Memories became malleable. Perceptions twisted and reformed. Most species would have been destroyed by the sensory overload. The humans began to play. Dr. Alex Chen's quantum computational approach turned the psychological challenge into a massive living algorithm. He didn't try to resist the changing reality. He began to map its underlying patterns. Each shift in consciousness became a data point, each memory a potential pathway. Zara Rodriguez watched as the team transformed the impossible challenge. They weren't just surviving. They were learning, adapting, growing. The Kralzar observers had never seen anything like it. Most species broke within moments. The human team was treating the psychological gauntlet like the most fascinating puzzle they had ever encountered. Temporal shifts that would have driven other minds to complete fracture became moments of collective discovery. Memories that should have been weapons of psychological destruction became shared experiences of understanding. "Look," Dr. Chen called out, his voice filled with excitement rather than fear. Do you see the pattern? The team's neural interfaces began to synchronize in ways that defied conventional understanding of consciousness. They weren't fighting the psychological challenge. They were dancing with it. Sophie identified how the environmental shifts mimicked complex ecological systems. Marcus recognized the underlying patterns of human adaptability. Alex translated the experience into pure mathematical possibility. And Zara held it all together, a conductor of human potential. The Crucible's psychological challenge was designed to break individual will. Instead, it was discovering the power of collective human consciousness. Hours passed, or perhaps moments. Time itself became a malleable concept. The human team emerged not just intact, but transformed. Their neural interfaces hummed with a new kind of collective intelligence. They had done more than survive the psychological gauntlet. They had turned it into a moment of shared discovery. The Kralzar observation team went silent. This wasn't just a competition anymore. This was a fundamental reimagining of what consciousness could mean. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was never about individual survival. It was about the magic that happens when minds truly connect. The middle stages of the Crucible were designed to isolate, to create division, to prove that no species could truly work together against the overwhelming challenges. The humans had other plans. As the challenges progressed, something extraordinary began to happen. Other participating species, those long oppressed by the Kralzar's rigid combat culture, started to watch the human team with growing fascination. It began during a seemingly impossible environmental challenge. While other teams fought against the changing landscapes, the humans approached each shift as a collaborative opportunity. Their communication transcended language. Their strategy defied traditional understanding of competition. A delegation from the Vexteri, a species that had been subjugated by the Kralzar for generations, noticed something revolutionary. The humans weren't just competing. They were reimagining what competition could mean. Dr. Sophia Nakamura caught the attention of a Vexteri observer during a particularly complex challenge. Instead of seeing the environment as an obstacle, she was analyzing it like a living ecosystem. Her excitement was infectious, a pure joy of discovery that cut through species boundaries. Marcus Okonkwo's movement through impossible gravitational fields caught the eye of smaller, more adaptive species. He wasn't fighting the environment. He was communicating with it. Each movement was a complex dialogue of human potential. Whispers began to spread through the participating species. Quiet conversations in observation decks. Shared moments of wonder. The Kralzar had designed the Crucible to prove galactic dominance. Instead, they were creating something far more dangerous. Hope. Small acts of collaboration began to emerge. A Zornic technical specialist shared a computational insight with Dr. Alex Chen. A quantum ray environmental analyst found herself deep in conversation with Sophia about adaptive systems. Zara Rodriguez recognized what was happening. This wasn't just a competition anymore. It was the beginning of something much larger. The human team didn't just compete. They invited others to see possibility where others saw only challenge. During one particularly complex stage, something unprecedented occurred. Species that had been competitors began to share insights, not to game the system, but out of genuine curiosity and respect. The Kralzar observation team grew increasingly uncomfortable. This wasn't how the Crucible was supposed to work. Competitors were meant to be isolated, divided, conquered. Instead, they were watching the birth of a new kind of collaborative intelligence. Small moments became significant. A Brylan engineer helping a human team member adjust a neural interface. A quantum ray environmental specialist sharing a complex ecological insight. Moments of pure, unbridled curiosity cutting through generations of imposed separation. Zara watched these interactions with a sense of profound understanding. The Crucible wasn't just testing individual species. It was revealing something fundamental about collective potential. By the challenge's midpoint, something remarkable had happened. The human team was no longer just competitors. They had become catalysts, showing other species a different way of existing. The Kralzar had created the Crucible to prove their supremacy. Instead, they were witnessing the birth of a new kind of galactic understanding. Collaboration wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity was leading the way. The final stage of the Crucible was a nightmare beyond comprehension, a multi-dimensional challenge that had historically destroyed every species that attempted it. Temporal distortions, quantum uncertainties, environmental shifts that would reduce most minds to molecular fragments. The human team saw it differently. Zara Rodriguez stood at the entrance, her team synchronized in a way that defied traditional understanding of teamwork. Their neural interfaces hummed with a collective intelligence that was more than the sum of individual minds. The challenge zone materialized, a living, breathing environment that existed in multiple states simultaneously. Gravitational fields twisted like living things. Sensory inputs created realities that would have shattered most consciousness. Dr. Alex Chen's quantum computational approach transformed the impossible into a massive living algorithm. Where others would see chaos, he saw a pattern. Where others would break, he found opportunity. "It's a communication system," he called out, his voice filled with excitement. Not a challenge, a conversation. Marcus Okonkwo moved through the shifting environments with a grace that suggested he wasn't fighting reality. He was dancing with it. His background in human performance optimization had prepared him for something far beyond traditional combat. Dr. Sophia Nakamura read the environmental systems like a complex musical score. Each shift, each impossibility became a moment of discovery. Where most would see destruction, she saw evolution in real time. The Kralzar observation team watched in growing disbelief. This wasn't just survival. This was a fundamental reimagining of what consciousness could mean. Temporal shifts that would have driven other species into immediate psychological fracture became moments of collective learning. The human team didn't just adapt. They transformed. Marcus identified patterns in the gravitational anomalies. Sophia mapped the ecological implications of the impossible environment. Alex translated the complex systems into pure mathematical potential. And Zara held it all together, a conductor of human potential. Hours passed, or perhaps moments. Time itself became a concept they could manipulate. The challenge was designed to be unbeatable, to prove the Kralzar's absolute supremacy. Instead, it became a moment of collective discovery. Other species watched in growing wonder. The humans weren't just competing. They were revealing a new way of existing. The final moments of the challenge approached. The environment reached levels of complexity that would have destroyed any other species in milliseconds. The human team began to laugh. Not from hysteria, not from fear, but from a pure joy of discovery. "Look," Sophia called out, "do you see how the temporal shifts create a living communication system?" Alex's computational overlays began to interact with the challenge environment itself. Probability fields danced around the team, creating protective systems that emerged from pure thought. Marcus moved through impossible geometries with the grace of someone exploring a fascinating new landscape. The Crucible itself seemed to respond, not as a challenge to be conquered, but as a complex system waiting to be understood. When they emerged, the observation deck went silent. They hadn't just survived the final Crucible, they had transformed it. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was never about individual power. It was about the magic that happens when minds truly connect. The award ceremony was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Traditionally, the Crucible's conclusion was a moment of galactic hierarchy. Winners would be crowned. Losers would be forgotten. The Kralzar Confederation had maintained this system for millennia. Today, everything would change. The human team stood together, not as individual competitors, but as a living demonstration of collective potential. Zara Rodriguez, Dr. Alex Chen, Marcus Okonkwo, and Dr. Sophia Nakamura represented something far more significant than a competition victory. They represented a new way of existing. The Grand Marshal of the Kralzar Confederation approached the podium. His massive form, a terrifying blend of mechanical augmentation and organic brutality, seemed to hesitate for the first time in generations. Silence filled the massive arena. 15,000 alien species watched with collective breath held. Humans, the Grand Marshal began, his voice carrying the weight of millennia of galactic tradition. You have done something unprecedented. But this wasn't a moment of defeat. It was a moment of profound transformation. The human team had done more than win a competition. They had revealed a fundamental truth about existence itself. Collaboration wasn't just a strategy. It was the most powerful force in the universe. Other species began to approach them, not as competitors, but as potential collaborators. The Vexteri delegation, a species long oppressed by the Kralzar, presented a complex neural interface design. The Brylin technical specialists shared computational insights. The quantum array environmental analysts brought ecosystem collaboration models. What had begun as a competition had become something far more significant. Dr. Sophia Nakamura saw it first. This wasn't just about the Crucible. This was about reimagining what species could achieve when they truly worked together. Alex's computational systems began to integrate the shared knowledge. Marcus's performance optimization techniques created communication models that defied previous understanding. Zara Rodriguez watched with a sense of profound possibility. The Kralzar Confederation, an empire built on competitive isolation, was witnessing its own fundamental transformation. We came here to prove something about humanity, Zara spoke, her voice carrying across the arena. But we've learned something far more important. No species exists alone. No challenge is truly insurmountable when minds connect. The arena erupted, not with the traditional roar of competition, but with something far more powerful: understanding. Alien species that had been competitors moments ago now shared insights. Computational systems merged. Environmental models became collaborative networks. The Crucible had been designed to prove galactic dominance. Instead, it had become a moment of collective awakening. As the ceremony concluded, it was clear. Humanity had not just won a competition. They had introduced the galaxy to a new way of existing. Warriors were no longer defined by individual strength. They were defined by the ability to connect, to understand, to transform. The galaxy would never be the same again.